Welcome to the Big Movement Podcast. If you're ready to create results and make huge strides in your business, finances, personal development, and health, then you're in the right place. Pushing past excuses and powering through procrastination can be a challenge alone. Here, you'll get the support, tools, and knowledge you need to get to the level you desire in your business and life. Let's get started with your host, Byron Ingram.
And welcome to another episode of the podcast. And today we have Simon Crowe, who coaches and mentors inspiring people and helps them come alive. He takes them on a life-changing adventure into their heart and soul, helps them connect with their deepest purpose. We're going to learn a little bit more how he does this and really helps them create success in their business and life. So, Simon, welcome.
Thank you, Byron. I'm really pleased to be here.
Sure. So how did you start this journey of helping people find that sense of being alive and creating those life-changing adventures and so on?
I fell into education originally by accident. When I was in my early 20s, I had a desire and a passion to travel. And so I became a teacher of English as a foreign language and went and lived in Italy for 5 or 6 years. A really beautiful experience, really wonderful. But it really opened my eyes up to the power of education and learning. And so I've spent my whole life, I guess, since I was in my early 20s, I'm now in my early 50s, just helping people to create new opportunities, to develop new information, new understanding, and to find new ways of applying that to create a difference in their life. I progressed through my career in teaching. Eventually I ended up as a manager in education. I was working for a large public body here in the UK, managing a team of 12 people. And we were involved in adult learning. And I loved the job to start off with. It was so aligned with my values and things. But eventually I just I began to lose sight of my worth within that job. I created this incredible team. And I had this real desire just to get back face to face with people again. And I worked with a coach because I was feeling so frustrated. And what the coach did for me was reconnect me with the joy and the desire I have to help people to create more fulfilling lives. So that was about 11 years ago. I trained as a coach and have been coaching ever since. And my journey has taken me all around the world. And I guess I continue to follow my curiosity. I continue to follow the things that I'm passionate about. I have this innate desire to see people thrive. And I've most recently, in the last 3 or 4 years, been taking groups out to West Africa on leadership development programs, and we get involved with working with local communities there. I'm going out there at the beginning of July to build a school, and it's just fabulous. So I just get to use all these gifts and desires and talents I have for helping people to grow and develop in lots of different ways. And I just feel really blessed to have this opportunity to just continue to work with people and help them to create more fulfilled lives.
It's amazing that you're able to do that, because I think so many times people, they lose sight of what they're passionate about. Just like you went through those years of being in the corporate world and becoming distant of what just lit you on fire to make things happen in life.
Absolutely. I mean, I hit a really sort of dark place, actually, because I'd reached the highest I could go within this particular organisation, and I just began to lose passion. I didn't enjoy the work that I was doing, and it got really. But I just knew deep down that I was here to do something else, and I was just really grateful to meet somebody, a coach who was able to reconnect me with those passions. It's a passion. They're the flames that you have to fan on your own. I mean, I do it through books and podcasts and constant studying and conversations with stimulating people. But I just guess we have deep in us that spark, and some of us find the opportunity to let that spark out and to start a fire, and others, unfortunately, don't find a way to do that.
Oh, definitely. And it's interesting that you say you lost that passion for what you're doing, because I think it's something that's so common in people, where if you think back to when you were in your 20s, like most people have that burning desire, you want to make all these changes in the world, you want to do all these amazing things, and suddenly you're confined to, lack of a better expression, a cubicle, and then that focus is now just driven towards doing one thing, and before long it becomes monotonous. And you look at how many people they go through their lives where they're just going through a routine, kind of like making a recipe over and over every single day. They're not doing anything different. Nothing's creative. It's the same thing.
I mean, we all love chocolate cake, but if you ate it 3 meals a day every day, it wouldn't take long until you got pretty sick of it.
Right, like, yay, cake, awesome.
Let's talk about cake.
Right. But you think how much that happens across the world where people that passion, it's just diminished, and they didn't have that honor, that opportunity to meet a coach along the way to help them find it again. And then they look back at their lives later like, oh my gosh, what did I miss out on?
It's funny, you've really reminded me of something. When you said when people are in their early 20s, you want to make all these that make this big impact in the world. I definitely had that desire. And I think that most of my focus at that age was around what I wanted to change, or how the world needed to change in order for me to be able to fully express myself. And I think that just very quickly through getting involved in coaching and the whole sort of developing a growth mentality was the realization that it's actually the changes had to happen within. And I mean, it may be changing, but certainly when I was in my 20s, I didn't know very many people who thought like that. Our whole setup was about how we change the external, because then that affects the internal. And I learned very, very quickly that if you turn that on its head and start to look at the internal and what you need to do to change, develop, to grow, that enables you to connect with that passion, and then, if you like, then bring it into reality.
And it's interesting you say that, because if you start looking at the masses today, I think there's more and more people who are becoming aware of the possibilities of working on themselves on the inside, instead of like, I'm going to change the world by doing something and then it doesn't happen, versus, like you said, they work on themselves and then the external changes begin to happen because they're influencing other people around them day in and day out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember thinking I'll change the world and I guess it was when the world changes and creates an opportunity for me to change the world, then I'll change it. But I realized that it's really about changing that inner world first.
Exactly, we have to do it, and it's when I think of the differences, and at the same time, I think there's certain changes that had to take place in the world in order for the masses to really begin to awaken. Because if you think about it, let's say 25, 30 years ago, unless you came across a particular book or you read a magazine article or something like that, there wasn't an easy way for a message to get in front of somebody that would inspire them to start thinking, maybe I need to do something different.
I mean, interesting. The information has been there for millennia. There's so much of what you read now in books about self and personal development is just ancient wisdom.
Right.
But I guess what's happening in the world at the moment is there is a definite growing movement. So it feels to me like, people are opening up to it.
Right.
And because it's becoming a movement, it starts to popularize things. People begin to feel that it's not abnormal to talk in a particular way or to think in a particular way. So that sort of self-judgment, that self-limiting starts to fall away. And you meet people who are like-minded more and more often. There are a lot more podcasts and books and films. Look at some of the movies that have been coming out over the last 10 years or so, really looking at a completely different paradigm. And I think it's really exciting to be part of that.
Oh, definitely. It's very exciting just to see the number of people that embrace concepts. Several weeks ago, I was listening to a podcast, and the person was talking about how if you were to look back, let's see, in the early 70s, if someone said, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, it was either like, what is that? Or it was frowned upon, like, why don't you just go get a job?
Mm-hmm.
versus you look at it today, it's like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. You're starting a new venture, and it's exciting to people because there's that shift.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. There's not so much fear around it.
You're right. It's because there's that time and it's taken so many changes in society and how people view striking off on your own that I think for one thing, years ago, the whole concept of certainty and safety was in place. Like you went to a company, and if you worked there long, if you had a pension, you had all these great benefits of being there. But once those started disappearing, I think that was the catalyst needed for people to look at new ways to do something, because they realized the only way they can create that certainty is they had to start taking control of it themselves. They couldn't let it be in the hands of someone else.
It's a really good point, isn't it? Yeah, the best way to create certainty was to take control. Whereas up until that point, people saw certainty within within a large organisation that offered job security, job for life. I'm sure you have heard this fact as well. They think that people nowadays will have at least 5 jobs, 5 careers actually, in their lifetime. Whereas I know just a couple of generations ago, people just didn't have that possibility or even desire. It just really wasn't in the psyche.
Oh, definitely. And if you think about it, years ago, it was common. Like someone had one career their whole life, and that was it. And in today's world, I think unless people are going into something that's highly specialized, like some types of engineering or medical and some areas like that, it's common for people to change.
Absolutely. I mean, I look at the things that I've studied in my own lifetime. I did business studies at university when I was an 18-year-old. Then I studied teaching because that was something I was very passionate about. Then I got into kind of leadership and management and studied a lot about that. I then did a master's degree in media technology for teaching adults. So looking at, because the internet came on stream in about 95, so I did my master's degree then. And then 10 years after that, I completely retrained as a coach. And I've been doing that ever since. And that doesn't feel unusual, or certainly not extraordinary. Right. There's a lot of people who have had similar paths. Perhaps the degree that they studied originally is not something they really even use any longer. I know I don't.
Right. I think it's a beneficial thing to continuously evolve and adapt to the world. Because if you look at the way things were done in the past, and you think of generations before us, where there was a time, let's say, when it came to retirement, like, oh, I'm looking forward to retiring and doing nothing, compared to now that the idea for some people, like retiring, why would I do that? I enjoy what I'm doing because they keep evolving. They're not doing the same thing, where they might have been passionate about one thing in their 20s and 30s, but now when they're in their, let's say, 50s and 60s, it's something else that excites them every single day. So they look forward to it. They have that sense of purpose when they wake up versus, okay, great, I'm looking forward to a bowl of cereal. Awesome.
But you're absolutely right. But also the pace of change. I mean, for centuries, things didn't really change very much. I remember a few years ago going to the Bank of England, and they had on the wall all of the old job roles within the Bank of England. This is going back 200, 300, 400 years. And what they were paid. Well, the salary of the people working in the Bank of England didn't go up for over 100 years because there was no inflation. There was the whole different economic model, wasn't there?
Right. Oh, yes.
Whereas now, people, if they don't get an annual pay rise, because they can't keep a pace with inflation, you look at the technological changes which come out day after day. It's just. To me, it's not just a passion around development and learning and continuously being flexible and fluid, but really, if you're not prepared to invest or embrace the constant pace of change, you get left behind. And that goes both for technology, but also in who we are. I mean, we just talked about this movement. If you're not part of that movement, then how are you thinking, and how is that thinking now relevant, or how is it now falling behind the way that people on the cutting edge are thinking? To me, it really is about surfing that wave, being part of the evolution that we're experiencing at the moment.
Right, and it's It's fascinating you use that reference of how things remain unchanged at the Bank of England for over 100 years that way. When you think of it now, if someone said, we're going to keep our business model the exact same for the next 100 years, they wouldn't last like a year.
Yeah,
just because things get to evolve.
Totally, and I look at my own coaching practice, and I started about 11 years ago. I was coaching people. I was doing what I called life coaching, so I was helping people to, I don't know, create more money, or perhaps find a relationship, or the things that they were struggling with in life. That was really fabulous. And then I moved into small business coaching, and I really enjoyed that. I did that for several years, and I loved working with entrepreneurs and all that kind of the entrepreneurial mindset. And then I moved, as my own development, I then started moving into the more kind of transformational type of coaching. And then again, more recently, it's about been taking people to different parts of the world, because I recognize that in a new context, people have a completely different perspective. And that's a really great way, again, about creating the conditions for change and evolution. And I imagine if I was doing what I'd been doing 10 years ago, I probably wouldn't have stayed coaching. But I just love reinventing what it is I do, the people I work with, the goals that we're connecting in with, or the ways that they want to create and change their lives. You probably hear the excitement and passion in my voice. I love what I do, and I'm really grateful for that. And it's certainly nothing like what I did 10 years ago.
And that's the best thing about it. It's continuously evolving, and we have to do that in all areas. Otherwise, if we don't have the same passion as we did when we first started, if that light that's within us ends up burning out, and our clients will just pick up on like you don't sound like you're into this, and before you know it, they leave.
Yeah, absolutely. So keep finding people who inspire and interest you.
Right. I think that's just one of those things that people have to do. It's always look for the things that fuel them. Otherwise, if you use an analogy, if you're building a fire, if you're not constantly adding fuel to it, eventually it dims down, becomes that very light, low haze of a fire, and before you know it, you just have embers, and then they're just ashes, and that's it. And it's done.
Yeah, and it's pretty difficult to restart the fire once you get down to the kind of the ember stage, whereas it's much better to be feeding that fire while there are still some flames.
Right. So how do you, when you're working with clients, keep that fire going? Because for some people, it's almost like they have to rebuild that entire fire, because they're down to the embers, because they've been in that career for so long and there's nothing left, and now they have to rebuild.
Yeah, it's a really great question. So for me, it's not about trying to rebuild the fire which is going out. It's about reconnecting with that original spark. So finding out from people what really makes their heart sing, what really makes their eyes shine, and really helping them to dream again, to see what would be, or what they could create. I love the expression that believing is seeing. So if you can believe you can create something, then eventually it comes into form and you can see it. And so I love to work with people in helping them to create big ideas and big dreams, and reconnect with the things that are really important to them. The passions that perhaps they've put to one side. Because if we get to work with people in a way that they connect with the things that they're passionate about, those skills, the things that they're really excited by, that's the energy, I think, that with which we build. I think that's the energy which enables us to get over those roadblocks when it gets difficult. Just reconnecting with the why you're doing something. And if it's about expressing that inner spark, to me, it's a great energy to work with. I talk about targeting that energy. So where's it taking us? Let's fan those flames. Let's see where it takes us.
Right. I think it's priceless to do those things, because so many people, they've lost sight of that thing that originally excited them. And because they've gone so far down one path, they need someone to help guide them back to it. Otherwise, they're just lost in the jungle.
Yeah, a lot of the clients that I work with nowadays are people who have created success. So they're high achievers, they're people who know how to create. And what I help them do is to find ways of creating more fulfillment in their lives. So applying the knowledge that you have in a different area, but really working on people's mindset and helping them to connect with the things that they really are passionate about, the things that really would make a difference and give them a level of fulfillment. And how can we bring the skills that you have, the knowledge that you have, and channeling it into something new? How can we supplement and augment the thinking that you have, which has got you to where you were? But what's the new thinking that you need to adopt and develop in order to create different results in a different area? And that's the kind of work that I love doing, at reconnecting somebody with their own spark and then seeing how far we can take that.
Oh, excellent. So why is fulfillment so important? Because it's a term that people hear all the time. Usually it's a buzzword out there, but I think some people just don't know why it's important to wake up and knowing that what they're doing is fulfilling versus being empty.
Well, I mean, again, the question is, would you rather feel fulfilled and excited about each day, or would you rather feel empty? Some people say, I'm fine feeling empty. I fill my days with TV and monotonous repetition, and I'm really comfortable with that. And that's fine. They're not the people that I necessarily connect and work with. But if you're somebody who knows deep down that there is more to life, they're the people that I really connect in with. And I think that why it's important to people is I believe that we have an innate or a natural inbuilt desire for self-actualization. Many people will be familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But once we've met all of those sort of physical and emotional needs, as we move up that hierarchy, so working with people who have created success, who have created stability in their lives, they don't want more stability. What they want to do is to find opportunities that enable them to grow, that self-actualization. So what are my unique gifts and talents? What makes me unique in this world, and how can I bring those into full expression for the benefit of myself and the benefit of the people around me?
And that is critical, I think, for people to look for ways to grow, because you look at like what happened in your world, where you reached the pinnacle of the career that you had, where you couldn't go any higher. And you look at how many people in the world that they don't start looking for new opportunities. They just accept that, well, this is as high as I can go. And they've mentally created boundaries they're now living in, instead of trying to figure out how can they take themselves from that one box they put themselves in and put them onto a blank canvas. So now they can define how far they go.
I absolutely, and I know that because I experienced it. I was absolutely in that box, and it was a self-created, self-constructed. But I had a good job, a good level of income, a lot of stability, I guess. I had some good holidays that I'd built up. My terms and conditions. How can I give that all away? How can I give that all away? And what's crazy is that what I thought was giving me certainty and security was actually what was keeping me from feeling any degree of satisfaction, of fulfillment. And so I had to let go of the safety of that and get curious and find courage, and make a commitment to changing my life and living it in a different way.
So how did you get past that need for certainty there? Because so many people, when I talk to them, saying you could do so much more with your knowledge, you just become an entrepreneur. And they're like, but I'd give up my vacation days. I built so many up, and all the health benefits. And I'm trying not to have that look on my face of, seriously?
but that that was the model that we were brought up in. Certainly,
right.
Certainly my parents' generation. And your question is, how do you get over that? Well, I think it takes commitment. I think it takes courage. I think it takes desire, and I think it also takes feeling supported. So feeling that you have a structure around you. It can sometimes feel very lonely doing on your own and very scary. But if you do it with somebody or with a group of people, so I don't know, joining a local, business club or working with a coach or finding a mentor, But I think just finding someone who at certain times when things feel really difficult, because they inevitably will, because any growth process, it has built into it moments of doubt and fear and desire to go back to where you were. I mean, that's part of the curve, the learning curve. I think that if you've got people around you who just know that you've got your back in those moments, people that you can really trust to stay with you on that journey, I think that's a really important thing. So, finding that internal will is something which is really, really important.
Oh, definitely. You have to have that internal fortitude to push through, because it's leaving everything that you once knew to go out into unknown territory, and having that coach, that mentor to guide you makes all the difference. So it lessens that feeling of uncertainty, like, well, what do I do about this? Well, here's the 5 things you can do about that. It's things that they might not have ever thought about.
And I guarantee that every single person has fear. It's not like certain people are lucky because they're courageous, and other people are unlucky and they have to stay where they are because they're not courageous. I think that courage is something that we can build. And interestingly, what gives us courage is by doing, by taking courageous acts or courageous steps. It doesn't work the other way around, or when I've got the courage, then I'll act. It's actually, well, if I act, that's what builds the courage. We build self-esteem by doing esteemable acts. It's people often get that the wrong way around. They believe that I need the courage first and then I can act. Well, it's actually, you need to act and the courage follows.
That is so true. We have to take those steps. Otherwise, it doesn't happen. I like to use that example of no one is able to run a race until you first learn how to walk. But you look at how many people, when it comes to business, they want to start that new venture. Like, I just want the success right away. But you haven't done any of these other steps first. You just don't go from, say, they want to be a speaker to speak in front of a crowd of 1,000 people when they haven't spoken in front of 2.
That's right. And of course, the brain, if you tell it, well, you've never spoken in front of anybody before, but now you're going to go and speak in front of 1,000 people. Well, the brain is going to feel overwhelmed by that. It's too big a step. So how do we break it down? How do we develop that courage step by step? So what is a step that doesn't feel too daunting? Well, I could speak to, I've got a group of friends, I could go and address them, or okay. And that's the first step. And what you're doing is you're building incrementally towards, the big goal. But to me, it's about having the courage to take that first step.
Right. I think a great example, you think back several years ago when you had the one individual who did this essentially a skydive from the upper limits of the atmosphere. And I had friends saying, "Oh my gosh, it'd be so awesome to do." It's like, you haven't even jumped out of a plane. So how about you start there first?
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. The fear kicks in when we give ourselves something which is too challenging, and the brain doesn't know how to deal with that. So having some support in breaking it down into things which are challenging and stretching, but not completely overawing.
Right. We have to do things that are at the edge of our comfort zone, and then when we realize that was okay, I didn't get hurt, that new zone is a little bit further, so we can keep pushing ourselves to new limits.
Yeah, absolutely. Doing things sort of incrementally. It's funny, I used to have a terrible, terrible fear of heights. I tell this story, I've written about this story actually, but I got to the point where I just was bored of being limited by my fear of heights. I was in the Amazon in Ecuador a couple of years ago, and I wanted to go up this tree, because you go up this tree, this kapok tree, and at the top of the tree was this platform where you could see the whole of the rainforest. This huge expanse of green with all these incredible birds and things up there. And to get up there, we had to go up a ladder. Well, this ladder was about 180 feet tall, and it just terrified me. And how I was able to get up there was I just literally took one step, and I asked myself, "Are you dead?" And if the answer was no, then I could take another step. If the answer had been yes, then it wouldn't have been a problem.
Right.
But it sounds crazy, but I literally did this. One step, are you dead? No. So what I was doing, I was, if you like, disproving to my brain the fear that it created, that if I went up this ladder I would definitely die. I was disproving to my brain that theory was actually true. And to me, I can't be more, I don't know, I couldn't use a better metaphor than literally one step at a time, and then saying, so is what you thought was going to happen happened? No. Then can you take another step? Okay, then let's take another step. And I did that up this ladder, and I got to the top and saw these incredible parrots and wonderful toucans and things, and it was just wonderful to know that I hadn't just been defeated by that fear that I've had since I was a young boy.
Oh, that's incredible. So now when you look at something that, 150, 200 feet in the air, do you still have that fear before you went up the ladder?
I still feel that sense of foreboding in my stomach, but I now have, if you like, a different pathway, a different new way of thinking about it. I was going to say neural pathway, but a different way of thinking about it, which goes, oh yeah, I remember that fear, and I also now remember that I've now created a different way of managing this. So the fear's there. I don't think we ever just eradicate fear, but we just find a different way of being with it.
Right, and I think it all comes down to being able to do something in spite of the fear that's present.
Mm.
Because if you're going through life being fearless, then that's dangerous all in itself. Like, oh, that looks like a cute kitty. That's a hungry lion. You shouldn't go pet that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a recklessness, and then there's the courage to take bold action in pursuit of your dreams, and that's what that's what we're really talking about.
Right, exactly. Because courage comes out of doing something despite of that fear that's present, and it evolves into all aspects of our life, and we just have to do it. Because if we let fear control us, then we'll always be within a cage, always be limited by what's possible, versus pushing through it to see the benefits on the other side. Just like you're able to go into above the canopy there and seeing so much of the rainforest, but you had to push through to get there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really it's just a really important thing, I think, that we allow ourselves to feel the fear and take the fear with us, I guess.
Right, we have to, otherwise we're stuck. And there's so much more to it than being stuck. And you'll look at how many people, they let simple fears hold them back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and fears are just habits. They're just a habitual way of thinking. And if you can get people to see that, to have the awareness of how they're thinking and how they're creating the bars of their own cage, but offer them a different way of thinking, so a different mindset, a different way of making meaning of a particular situation, then those bars can just fall away by themselves. You don't have to fix anything necessarily. You just need to change the way you think.
Right, exactly. Changing the way we think, I think, is that foundation that everyone has to begin developing in themselves, so they could leave that high place of certainty to go into the areas which make sense for them, what truly inspires them, what ignites them with passion and creates fulfillment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's really interesting. I take groups of people now to Liberia in West Africa, and if you say the word Liberia to most people, it creates enough fear for them to not want to come. That's part of the challenge that I like to set for people. Certainly, people now who want to move into leadership, or want to really express themselves fully as leaders. Is taking them into environments where nothing is familiar, and knowing that they've got to find different ways of thinking and behaving in a new context. You go into a situation where the things that you would normally do in any given situation don't work. They don't have any particular meaning because the context is completely different. A very simple example: I sponsor a young woman out in Liberia. I help her. Help set up a business with her so she can pay for her schooling. we were once sitting in a hotel lobby, and she was looking at the TV, and I said, "Do you have a TV?" And she said, "I don't have electricity." And I instantly felt pretty stupid, because I kind of knew that, but how quickly we forget. So why I wanted to share that story is if someone's context is so different, then you have to find a very different way of interacting. You can't just give people advice. You can't just tell them what to do, because their reality might be completely different, or is completely different. Whereas where your advice really doesn't have any sway, it doesn't fit within the context in which they live. And to find different ways of being resourceful, being resilient in that moment. Again, it's another example about how we take ourselves into situations where we can learn new things, we can evolve, we can create new ways of thinking, as we said.
Right, and I think right there, it's so priceless about understanding context, because we're living in this global world where, in the past, before the proliferation of the internet and social media, most people were limited to working with those who were within, I like to say, 3 feet of them, so people that were local. But now that, as we're having conversations, I'm here in the States and you're over in the UK, that this is the world that we live in now, that it's so global. We have to look at how do we communicate effectively, and the context of how we relate to something is different depending on who we talk to.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I really like the point you're making, because I have clients all over the world. Clients in Japan, in Central America, in North America. It's to me, it's in Africa also. It's how do I show up in a way which isn't bringing my version of the world and bringing it to bear on the people that I coach or the people I interact with when I go out to Africa. What I love to do as a coach is how can I bring my natural curiosity and so I can reflect back to you what your version of the world is, so you can see how you currently think, and you can also see where that's limiting you, and you can also see new opportunities for thinking. So I really like what you're saying. To me, it's about being really, really present, and being curious, and not being so closely wedded or committed to our own view of the world, but just being open and allowing people to create their own meaning.
Exactly. We have to do that, because it's the way the world is evolving into, that business on a global scale is no longer limited to large corporations. It's happening at businesses of all sizes, of individual entrepreneurs, coaches, speakers, authors, you name it. Everyone is building the international platform, and we have to recognize the differences, so we always ensure we're communicating effectively, instead of wondering, well, how come they didn't understand the message? Did you look at the language you're using? It didn't make sense, even though it's technically, let's say it's the English language, but the terminology refers to something entirely different.
Yeah, and it may not be even the terminology, but it's just the other person's experience. And if you're not speaking to their experience, I'll give you another very simple example. I was watching the same TV program with this girl, Mickey, and she looked really agitated because there was some on the screen. There were some kids playing on an inflatable in a river, and I said, what's wrong? And she said, what will happen if that boy falls in the river? And I said, I don't know. He'll probably just swim. He'll be fine. She said, won't he die? And I said, no, I don't think he'll die. And then I had the realization that she has probably never been submerged in water. So she's never had a bath, she's probably never had a shower, she's never been in a swimming pool, probably never swum in the river or swum in the sea. So she didn't actually know with any certainty what would happen if this boy fell into the water. She didn't know if people could swim. And to me, that was such a fantastic reminder of, bringing my version of the world into places creates distance rather than connection. So,
right.
Yeah, and to me that's a really important thing. When we use our curiosity in situations like that to try and understand the other person's perspective, because there's something about their experience, their upbringing, their culture, which is informing that experience, which doesn't make their experience wrong and mine right, or theirs right and mine wrong. We're beginning to start talking about even bigger issues here. I think that if we bring a natural curiosity to why people do things in a different way from us, it starts to, the boundaries, the borders, the distance between groups of people begin to fall away. Because I don't have to impose my view on you. I can just be curious about why you see the world as you do. It's like having a pair of glasses, with different coloured lenses. I could pick up your glasses and put them on, and that's what the world looks like through blue lenses. And they might do the same as, that's what the world looks like through pink lenses. But it's not like, blue's the right lens and pink's the wrong lens. It's just about being open to a different perspective. Be curious. Find out why people see the world differently. And I think, we could think of a whole list of areas in life at the moment where it's our intolerance of other people's perspectives which are causing, many of the problems that we're currently facing. That lack of curiosity, that need to be fully committed to and attached to a particular perspective. It starts to create problems rather than create closeness.
Right, exactly. If so much in the world can be solved if we simply learn how to be more curious about someone else's perspective. Because just if you think about all the conflicts, the issues that we're having, it all stems to the lack of understanding. If people just took 5 minutes to look like, that makes sense, or I don't necessarily have to understand it, but I'm willing and open to learn about it, that would change everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to allow that to be true for you.
Right. Exactly. Instead of taking the approach of, I don't like that, I will smash you. Someone's
absolutely.
approach.
I've got to change you because you don't see the world as I see it. Therefore, you're wrong, and my duty is to make everybody see the world that I see it, how I see it, because I've got the right. Because I've got the right version of the world. My lenses are the correct lenses. I don't buy that.
Right. Exactly. So much can happen if people are willing to stop trying to change everybody and just be open to the possibility of different viewpoints and understanding. So as we begin wrapping up everything here today, what's one thing you would recommend for people to do so they can begin to rediscover that passion that they once had and redirect what they're doing so they can be fulfilled every single day?
So I would sit down and reflect and start to think, what are the things that in life give me the most pleasure? Is it being around people? Is it playing a musical instrument? Am I an artist? Do I enjoy some kind of physical activity? Am I just a natural adventurer and I love to explore the world? And just to start to think about, if I lived my life from the things which I'm passionate about, if I made my money from the things that I'm passionate about, if I looked at ways that I could serve the world from the things that I'm passionate about, what starts to emerge? And just be really curious. Well, if that starts to emerge, what could that actually start to look like? How could I start to bring that into some sort of form? What could I create from this perspective? It's not about the how to do it. It's what would be possible, what would be impossible, but what would just be something that I would absolutely be so passionate about if I could just live from this perspective. But I think what it requires, in answer to your question, is that people have to make the commitment to do that, because it's really difficult to change. If you just live your day, your daily routine the same way each day, it's very difficult to one day decide you're going to sit down and reflect in a different way. So it does take commitment. It takes a decision moment in your life that you're going to start looking at things differently, and sit down and do that and find the way of committing to doing that. Because to me, if you're prepared to start to uncover that spark, then what tends to happen is the support systems, the opportunities will come and support you with that.
Oh, excellent. That makes all the difference in the world. So how can people reach out to you and learn more about what you do?
So my website is simoncrowe.com. I also have another website called thebigidea.space. That's about the work that I do in leadership in Liberia. I'd love people to visit my website. There's a whole piece on there about curiosity, actually. And if people feel inspired to share with me their biggest idea, so not what it is they necessarily want to create, but what they would just love to create if there were no obstacles in their life. And if they want to write to me and share that with me, I'd be really excited to start a dialogue about what that might actually mean, what that could actually start to look like.
Oh, excellent. Well, I want to thank you for coming to the podcast today and sharing your wealth of wisdom on beginning to understand others through curiosity and reigniting that passion so each day is fulfilled versus being empty.
I've really enjoyed speaking to you. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thanks for listening to the Big Movement Podcast today. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Now that you've surely been inspired to take your entrepreneurial career and business to the next level, you can stop by the website and get more. And if you're ready to boost your business brand, be sure to grab your free report, 7 Easy Steps to Build Your Brand Today.